This secret helps you stay sharp after 70. I'll share something that most people overlook, yet it makes all the difference when you pass 70. It is not a fancy trick or complicated formula. It is something simple but powerful, something I've seen work for myself and many others. When I was younger, I believed staying sharp was just about keeping busy. I thought as long as I read books, did puzzles, and stayed active, my mind would never fade. But as the years went by, I noticed something strange. Some people did all the right things and still lost their sharpness. Others, even with fewer resources or education, stayed mentally strong well into their 80s and 90s. I became obsessed with understanding why. I have lived long enough to see friends and family age differently. Some remain lively, engaged, and full of curiosity. Others become forgetful, withdrawn, and slow to respond. I have had deep conversations with people well past 90 who speak with the clarity of someone half their age. And I have also seen people in their 60s struggle to remember simple things. The difference is not just in genetics or luck. It comes down to one secret most people ignore. The mind is like a fire. It needs fuel to burn bright. But the right kind of fuel makes all the difference. People assume keeping the brain busy is enough. They read, they play games, they stay socially active. But here is what they miss. The brain does not just need activity. It needs challenge. And not just any challenge. It needs to struggle in ways that are slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort, that effort, is what keeps the mental fire burning strong. I learned this the hard way. Years ago, I was stuck in a routine. I read the same types of books. I had the same conversations with the same people. I did crosswords and Sudoku, thinking I was keeping my brain sharp. But I noticed something. It was all too easy. I had fallen into a comfort zone. My brain was active, but not truly working. That was when I decided to change everything. I forced myself into situations where I had to learn something new. I picked up a new language. At 73, I started learning Spanish. It was frustrating at first. My brain resisted. I felt silly making mistakes. But over time, something changed. I noticed I was thinking faster. My memory improved. Conversations became easier. That was when I realized the truth. The brain needs real challenge to stay sharp. Not just busy work, but real struggle. It does not have to be a new language. A 75-year-old friend of mine started playing the piano for the first time in his life. At first, his fingers did not cooperate. He said it felt impossible. But now, a few years later, he plays beautifully and speaks more clearly than ever. Another friend, a woman in her 80s, started learning to code. She had never touched a computer before, but now she is solving problems that would stump younger people. The pattern is clear. Real mental challenge keeps the mind young. The mistake most people make is thinking they can coast. They stick to familiar things. They read, but do not push themselves to think differently. They talk to the same people about the same topics. They do puzzles that have become too easy. Their brains are active, but not challenged. And slowly, without realizing it, their sharpness fades. I have seen this in myself. When I spend weeks without pushing my mind, I feel the difference. My thoughts slow down. My memory weakens. But when I throw myself into something new, when I struggle to understand a new idea or skill, I feel alive again. The brain responds to challenge the way muscles do. It grows stronger when pushed. People often ask me if it is too late to start. They think if they've already lost some sharpness, there is no way back. That is not true. I have seen people in their late 80s turn their mental decline around by embracing struggle. A man I know, at 89, started writing poetry for the first time. At first, he struggled to find the right words. But after months of effort, his mind became sharper than it had been in years. He remembers things more easily. He tells stories with more detail. His doctor says his cognitive health has improved. The secret is simple. Do something that makes your brain sweat. Not just anything. It must be something new and slightly uncomfortable. Learning a musical instrument. Picking up a new hobby that requires problem solving. Studying a new subject. Engaging in deep, meaningful discussions about ideas that challenge your views. Even something as simple as switching hands to do daily tasks forces the brain to adapt. Most people avoid struggle. They want life to be easy. They avoid feeling uncomfortable. But that comfort is what causes the mind to weaken. The best thing you can do for yourself is to embrace that discomfort. It means your brain is growing. I wish someone had told me this when I was younger. I spent too many years in routines that did not challenge me enough. I saw others decline and assumed it was just part of aging. But now I know better. I have met too many people who defy the norm. Their minds stay strong not because they were lucky, but because they kept pushing themselves. They never settled into an easy mental life. If you want to stay sharp after 70, do not just keep busy. Challenge yourself. Push your brain into unfamiliar territory. Embrace the struggle. It will feel uncomfortable at first. You might even feel a little foolish. But that discomfort is proof you are doing it right. It means your brain is waking up, growing stronger, and staying sharp. That is the real secret. Now, let's clear some common questions. Can someone who already feels their memory slipping regain their mental clarity, or is it too late? I have heard this question many times from people who feel their memory is slipping. They ask in a quiet, almost fearful voice, "Is it too late? Can I get my mental clarity back?" I see the worry in their eyes, the frustration when they forget names or lose track of their thoughts mid-sentence. They think it is the beginning of the end, that once the mind starts to fade, there is no way to bring it back. I understand that fear because I have felt it myself. Years ago, I started noticing little things. I would walk into a room and forget why I was there. I would struggle to find the right word in conversation. I would misplace things that were in my hands just moments before. At first, I ignored it. I told myself it was normal, a part of aging. But deep down, I felt something slipping away, and that feeling terrified me. I remember a day when I was talking to an old friend, a man I had known for over 50 years. In the middle of our conversation, I forgot his wife's name, a woman I had spoken to hundreds of times. I stood there, struggling, my mind grasping for something that should have come easily. That was the moment I knew I had to do something. I have lived long enough to see two types of people: those who accept memory loss as an unavoidable part of aging, and those who fight against it with everything they have. The difference between them is like night and day. I have seen people in their 70s and 80s regain their sharpness. I have seen them come back from a foggy mind and speak with the clarity of someone half their age. And I have also seen those who let it slip away because they believed it was too late. The truth is, the brain is not a candle that burns down to nothing. It is more like a muscle that weakens from lack of use. And just like a muscle, it can be strengthened again. But it takes work, and not just any work, the right kind. I learned this the hard way. In my early 70s, when I felt my memory slipping, I tried the usual things. I read more books. I did crossword puzzles. I played memory games. But nothing changed. I was keeping my brain active, but I was not truly challenging it. Then I did something different. I forced myself into situations that made my brain sweat. I started learning a new language. The first few weeks were painful. I struggled to remember even the simplest words. I felt foolish, but I kept going, and something incredible happened. After a few months, I noticed I was remembering other things more easily. Not just the new language, but names, places, conversations. My brain felt awake again. I realized that real growth comes from real struggle, the kind that makes you uncomfortable. I saw the same thing happen to a friend of mine who, at 78, decided to start playing the piano. He had never touched an instrument before. At first, his fingers would not cooperate. He would forget the notes. But he pushed through, and after a year, not only was he playing music, but his conversations had become sharper. His wit had returned. His memory had improved in ways he never expected. The mistake most people make is thinking that keeping the brain busy is enough. They read the same types of books. They watch the same news. They talk to the same people about the same things. Their brain is active, but it is not being challenged. And without challenge, there is no growth. The brain needs to struggle. It needs to face something new, something that forces it to adapt. Another thing I discovered is that movement plays a bigger role in memory than most people realize. When I started feeling my mind slow down, I also noticed I was moving less. I was sitting more, staying in my comfort zone. Then I changed that. I started walking every day, and not just casual walks. I made it a habit to walk in new places, taking different routes, forcing my brain to navigate and stay engaged. Within weeks, I felt a shift. My thoughts became clearer. My energy returned. The connection between body and mind is stronger than most people think. I also realized that what we feed our brain matters. I spent years eating without much thought. But once I started focusing on foods rich in healthy fats, fresh vegetables, and enough water, I noticed a difference. The fog lifted. My focus improved. It was as if my brain had been running on low-quality fuel for years, and I had finally given it what it needed. People ask me if it is really possible to regain mental clarity after feeling it slip away. I tell them yes, but not by waiting, not by hoping, by acting, by pushing, by struggling in ways that make the brain work harder, by moving the body, by feeding the mind the right fuel. I have seen it happen. I have felt it happen. And I know that no matter where you are, no matter how much you feel your memory has faded, there's always a way back. The difference between staying sharp and fading away is a choice. A choice to fight for your mind, to challenge yourself every day, to never let comfort steal your sharpness. I made that choice. And if you do too, you'll be amazed at what your mind is still capable of. How do emotions and mindset influence brain health? And can a negative attitude speed up decline? I remember an old friend of mine, a man I had known since my youth. He was always full of complaints. Nothing was ever right. Every small problem was a sign that the world was falling apart. If it was not his health, it was the government. If it was not the weather, it was the younger generation. He carried his negativity like a heavy coat, refusing to take it off. And over the years, I watched him change. His memory faded faster than the rest of us. His ability to think clearly, to hold conversations, to stay engaged in life, all of it declined at a pace that seemed unnatural. It was as if his own mind was giving up on him, just as he had given up on the world. Then there was another man I knew. He had every reason to be bitter. Life had not been kind to him. He had lost his wife young, struggled with health problems, and faced more hardships than most. But he never let it break him. No matter what happened, he found a way to laugh, to stay curious, to wake up each day with a sense of purpose. Even in his 90s, he was sharp. His mind was quick, his memory strong. He remembered details from decades ago with ease, while others his age struggled to recall what they had for breakfast. I used to wonder how two people, both aging, both facing similar struggles, could have such different outcomes. And then I realized the answer was right in front of me. It was not just about what they did. It was about how they thought. The man who carried bitterness carried decline with it. The man who embraced life, no matter how difficult, kept his mind alive. Science can explain a lot of this, but I did not need science to see it happening. I did not need a study to tell me that stress, anger, and hopelessness were the mind down. I have felt it myself. I remember times when I let worry take over. My mind felt sluggish, my thoughts slow. On days when I focused on problems more than possibilities, I felt old. Not just in my body, but in my mind. And then there were days when I reminded myself to be grateful, to let go of what I could not change, to find something to smile about. In those days, I felt sharp. I felt alive. I learned that the mind is not just a machine that runs on fuel. It is something deeper, something shaped by emotions, by beliefs, by the way we speak to ourselves. I have seen people who fill their days with worry, and their minds seem to shrink under the weight of it. I have seen others who find joy in the smallest things, and their minds remain open, strong, and full of life. Some people think a negative attitude is just a personality trait, that some are born pessimists and others are born optimists. But I have learned that attitude is a choice, a habit, something that can be changed just like anything else. I was not always as clear-minded as I am now. There was a time when I let frustration and anger take hold more often than I should have. And I paid the price. My sleep suffered. My memory faltered. My energy drained. But when I made the effort to shift my thinking, to focus on what I could control instead of what I could not, everything changed. My thoughts became clearer. My memory improved. I felt younger, not just in body but in mind. People ask me if a negative attitude can speed up mental decline. I tell them yes, because I have seen it happen. I have lived long enough to watch people age themselves before their time, simply by carrying too much resentment, too much fear, too much anger. I have also seen people reverse their own decline by changing the way they think. It is not magic. It is not some mystery. It is the simple truth that the mind thrives on hope, on curiosity, on the decision to keep moving forward. I'm not saying life is easy. I know better than that. There are days when it is hard to stay positive, when pain, loss, and frustration make it feel impossible. But I have also learned that those are the moments when it matters most. When choosing to think differently is what keeps the mind from slipping away. It is in those moments that we decide whether to grow or to fade. I do not care how old someone is. I do not care how much they feel they have lost. I have seen men in their 80s and 90s regain their sharpness simply by shifting the way they see the world, by focusing on what they can do instead of what they cannot, by finding something to look forward to each day, even if it is something small. The mind is not just a collection of memories. It is a living thing shaped by how we treat it. And the way we think, the way we feel, the attitude we carry, these things matter more than people realize. I know because I have lived it, because I have watched others live it, and because I have seen the difference between a mind that fades too soon and one that stays alive until the very end. The difference is not luck. It is not just genetics. It is choice, and that choice is in your hands. What daily habits unknowingly weaken mental sharpness, and how can they be replaced with better ones? One of the biggest mistakes people make is filling their days with too much routine and too little challenge. Doing the same things in the same way, day after day, makes the brain lazy. I have known people who wake up, eat the same breakfast, read the same newspaper, talk to the same people, and watch the same television shows. Their minds move in circles, never stretching, never growing. And then they wonder why their memory fades, why their thoughts feel slow. The brain is like a muscle. It needs variety. It needs to be pushed. I have made a habit to shake things up, even in small ways. I take a different route when I walk. I read books that challenge my thinking. I learn something new, even if it is just a word or a fact. Every small change forces my mind to stay awake, to stay engaged. Another habit that weakens mental sharpness is spending too much time consuming and not enough time creating. People sit for hours scrolling through their phones, watching television, letting information flood in without doing anything with it. The brain becomes passive, absorbing without effort. I used to do this myself. I would read articles, listen to the news, let words and images pass through me without truly thinking about them. And I noticed how it made my mind feel dull. So I changed. Instead of just reading, I started writing my thoughts down. Instead of just listening, I made sure to discuss what I learned with others. Instead of just watching, I practiced recalling details and making connections. Creation sharpens the mind. Speaking, writing, drawing, solving problems, these things keep the brain alive. One of the most dangerous habits is neglecting deep, meaningful conversation. I have seen people let their days pass without truly engaging with another person. They talk, but they do not connect. Their conversations are shallow, filled with complaints about the weather, gossip, or repeated stories. They do not challenge their thoughts. They do not exchange ideas. And slowly, their ability to think deeply weakens. I have made it a point to seek conversations that matter. I ask questions. I listen. I debate. I learn from others, and I let them learn from me. A sharp mind is not one that simply remembers things. It is one that could take ideas, turn them over, and see them from different angles. And that only happens through real, meaningful discussion. Another silent killer of mental sharpness is poor sleep. I used to believe I could get by on just a few hours, that I was strong enough to push through exhaustion. But I was wrong. A tired brain is a slow brain. I started forgetting things. I felt more irritable. My thoughts felt scattered. When I finally prioritized sleep, everything changed. I made sure to have a routine to keep my room dark and cool, to avoid staring at bright screens before bed. I noticed that my mind felt clearer, my memory sharper, my focus stronger. Sleep is not a waste of time. It is when the brain repairs itself, sorts through memories, and prepares for the next day. Without it, the mind crumbles. A habit that weakens the mind without people realizing it is avoiding solitude. Many fill every moment with noise. They keep the television on, listen to music, stay busy with distractions. They never sit alone with their thoughts. And over time, they lose the ability to think deeply, to reflect, to process emotions. I used to be uncomfortable with silence. I felt the need to fill it. But when I started making time to simply sit with my thoughts, to reflect on my day, to ask myself difficult questions, I found my mind becoming sharper. Solitude strengthens awareness. It allows the mind to process, to reset, to grow. Another dangerous habit is not moving enough. People sit too much. They stay in one place for hours, barely stretching, barely using their bodies. What they do not realize is that movement fuels the brain. Blood flow brings oxygen, energy, clarity. When I was younger, I could sit for hours without noticing. But as I aged, I realized how much movement matters. I started walking more. I stretched. I stood instead of sitting when I could. And I noticed my mind felt more awake, more focused. Physical movement is not just for the body. It is for the mind. One of the worst habits people fall into is avoiding discomfort. They stay in their comfort zones, doing what feels safe, what feels familiar. They do not take risks. They do not challenge themselves. And their minds become weak because of it. I used to resist change. I thought I was protecting myself. But I learned that growth only happens through challenge. I started doing things that made me uncomfortable. I spoke to people I did not know. I tried hobbies that I was not naturally good at. I faced fears instead of avoiding them. And with every small challenge, my mind grew stronger. Comfort is the enemy of sharpness. A mind that is never tested becomes dull. If you like today's discussion, don't forget to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, hit the subscribe button and the bell icon to stay updated with every video we release. And yes, don't forget to share your experiences and thoughts in the comments. Every comment is special to us. Your feedback helps us improve further. We'll continue to meet you in every new video on this channel. So until next time, take care.